Welcome to episode 10 of PodQuest, where we take out two birds with one Wiimote. Also, take one Paul. This week's edition, we talk about controllers.
I would say, well done, sir. Well done. Well done.
Yeah, we talk about what our favorite controller is, maybe the lineage of some controllers. And Dustin put up a poll so we can get the viewers' opinions.
Poll results, yeah.
Kelsy is all about poll results.
I am.
Yep.
Love them statistics.
Yep.
Well, we got your usual crew with us here. Player 1, Dustin Lyon.
Player 2, I think I was a different player last week, Kelsey.
Player 3, Paul.
All right, so
P3.
as Paul mentioned,
the multi-tap out.
today's episode is all
Multi-tap out.
on the best controller ever.
Oh, God.
What's going on
Tea's
over there?
really hot.
It's got some hot tea.
I usually have a
Hot
tea.
tea?
This tea
Some
is...
hot Mr. T.
I'm going to need bomb. Who told you to put the bomb on? I didn't tell you to put the bomb on. Why'd you put the bomb on?
I don't know what's happening.
Okay.
I don't know what's happening either. So, yeah, today's episode is all about the best controller ever out of this pile of controllers that Kelsey brought that we can.
It could be not out of this pile.
It could
too.
not be out of this pile.
I just
That
brought
is very
some
true.
wide variety. Years.
As the usual, why don't we start with Paul?
Yes.
What were you playing this week?
PUBG, Rainbow Six. I think that's...
Usual rundown.
I played a little bit of Don't Starve together.
You done with Battlefront now? Are you just taking a break? Or?
No, I play it periodically, every once in a while. But there's been a really big push for Rainbow Six lately.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Me and my one friend have been playing it, and then another one of our mutual friends picked it up, and he's been playing it, and his whole group of friends have been playing it, so we've been cycling that through.
Nice.
We have
big crew people to
like
choose from.
7 people, so there's always somebody on, always somebody playing, so...
That's Rainbow Six Siege, right?
Yeah,
where
Rainbow
you have to
Six
break
Siege.
into the house and stuff.
Yep.
I love that idea of like the destructible environments and stuff.
And it's super tactical, and it's a lot of fun. Like, you really have to think about what's going on, all the different... pick a bunch of different operators, and they're essentially different police or soldiers, and they all have different abilities. So the Canadian defensive character, she's female. She has bear traps. You can put them in front of windows, and somebody will jump through a window. They're like, ah! So it's quite fun. It's a very
I don't know if
violent
you're
game.
being serious right now or not. Is that an actual
That's
thing?
an actual thing. Her name is Frost. It's
Bear traps.
It's so good. I love it.
That's racist.
Last week in PUBG, I was having like a really difficult time. We were trying to make the transition into first person because of the amount of cheaters that have been in third person. It's become like really bad, overwhelmingly bad.
Cheating in which way?
Aim hacks, wall hacks, things like that. So like snap.
There's way more in the third person servers than
Yes.
there in the first.
Apparently, now this is what I've heard, that Chinese players don't play first person as much. They prefer third person. And the majority
do
of
you
cheaters...
feel like a lot of these cheaters are from the Asian
It's been
market?
proven that it is from the Asian market. They've been trying... There's been a big push, and I think it's going to happen when the game gets fully released in China. It's going to be region locked.
Yeah.
That won't stop them.
Yeah,
but
that won't
it might
stop them.
reduce them. There was a study done on it saying that
That's where we're spending research money, studying
well,
PUBG
there's
hacks.
PUBG players study PUBG. It's something like there's one hacker in every 5 games you play or something like that. And if you consider how many games are going on at once, like that's a lot of hackers.
Consider even yourself, 1 out of every 5 games that you play. It could be, 5 quick games back to back, or 1 really long game and 4 quick. So yeah, it could be.
And it might even be more like that. That I might have misread that. It might have been there's 5 in every 1 game. I can't remember. Something like that.
It's even worse.
Yeah. So yeah, we've been having really good games. Rainbow Six back on the winning train, in duos at least. In PUBG, like just jump on. We were winning. Like first game we win, second game doing really good. Top
Nice.
3, top 2.
Nice.
Yeah, so going really good. And I played a little bit of Don't Starve together. Fun multiplayer kind of casual game to get into, and that's about it.
Remind me, you and I got to pass our Steam names back
You
and
pass. Oh, Steam names. Yeah, you gave me.
I gave you my battle tag, but I forgot to give you my Steam one.
I'll put you on probably tonight if I'm on my computer, and then we'll get Steam going, and then
either some Overwatch or some PUBG.
And I've got a lot of fun like party games, I've got that Ultimate Chicken Horse. I have Don't Stop Running. I have We Need to Go Deeper, which I feel Kelsey would have a lot of fun with that game. And Genital Jousting. Which, me and a group of friends bought it. I kept it. Everybody else refunded it.
What the game to transition over to?
Yeah. So get my Steam name. We can genital joust. Welcome to PodQuest. We're 2 out of 3 of us genital joust. Or 3 out of 2 of us.
3 out of 2. Kelsey, what's been up this week?
Not much gaming again, actually, but I've been doing a lot of movies and TV this week. So I rewatched all 3 of the 90s Ninja Turtle movies with my whole family.
Nice.
I started Clone Wars. And
For the first time?
For the first time ever.
Wow.
Yeah. And watched Thor: The Dark World. Because I realized I'd never sat through the whole thing because we went to go watch that at the drive-in and our car battery died, and so we missed a good 20-minute chunk while we were like trickle charging the battery to get it going again, and it was stormy out.
That's fine. 20 minutes of that movie is, you could probably skip 2 hours of that movie.
I've always heard it's like the worst of the Marvel movies. I don't know if I'd say that.
I wouldn't say that. The first
It's
Thor.
not the worst.
The first Thor
I
is
love
the
the
worst.
first Thor. No, that's pretty up there for me.
Remind me why we were friends again?
Because you like my taste in movies. But watching Turtles with my family was really fun because my son's super into Turtles as a brand. He's more into like the new cartoon, so he didn't know these existed. And he watched one of the 2 Michael Bay movies.
Which one?
Took him the first one.
Okay.
And his thoughts were?
He was kind of into it, but he really prefers the cartoon right now.
Yes.
Oh yeah, definitely. The new cartoon is really good
It's
as well.
fantastic. I watched the first couple of seasons with him, and it's good. So he got really into the movie too. And I always remembered liking the second one the most as a kid. That is easily the worst of the 3 of them. Even the ridiculous time travel stuff in 3 is not as cheesy and awful as just the lines and the jokes in the second one.
I watched the second one in the last 2 years, and I still really enjoyed it. The first one is definitely the best by far.
Yeah, there's head and shoulders above the other 2.
The second
I'd
one...
say 3's way above 2, and then 2 is like... There's some stuff I still love and I'm very nostalgic for in 2, but it's weak compared to those other 2.
I don't know. Vanilla Ice, Coconut and Razor, Kevin Nash.
They're all bad.
Super Shredder.
Like, it doesn't make any sense. He drinks some mutagen and he grows extra spikes and his like whole costume gets fixed, and
That makes sense.
it's a little
to me.
ridiculous.
It's a super potion.
It's movie logic, man.
Exactly. It's potion logic.
I
Who
did-
are you to know the properties of mutagen?
Oh, I've studied it.
Oh,
Yeah. Spent those PUBG research dollars
that was
on
his
PUBG
research
research back in the
dollars.
90s.
Yeah.
That was his major in university.
Yeah.
Mutagen.
TGRI research facility.
Mhm.
So it was neat watching it with my whole family. Even my daughter, who is 1.5, was giggling at some point.
Captivated by it.
When people would hit each other, it's funny to children, so she'd giggle once in a
Something
while
about-
during the fight scenes.
It's all about 90s action movies, like, because I can think of like Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers and stuff. Like, they always had like wacky like fighting scene stuff, but they were pretty funny to watch.
Yeah.
The choreography for the fights wasn't bad in the first Turtles movie either. It got a little sillier as they went on, like especially like the opening scene in 2 where they're like fighting with sausages and toys and stuff. But the first one, like, they didn't mess around with stuff like that.
The first one is a little cheesy in the fight scene when Raffi gets beat up and the other turtles come. And they're like spinning each other around on their back, and the choreography
They
doesn't
do
look
that
as
the once,
sharp.
and then they're trying to like axe him into the ground. He's just rolling back and forth. There's a little bit of that.
That's the only scene really I have a complaint
And
about.
Shredder doesn't look as intimidating as you'd want him to be.
He sounds awesome.
He
though.
sounds amazing, and the costume's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
But
And,
the guy wearing it looks like he's 90 pounds. Like, you can just see
He's
it
tiny,
like,
yeah.
off of him.
Droops off of him. Sam Rockwell, I think that was his first motion picture role, was in Ninja Turtles 1.
Who was he in there?
He is one of the gang members in the Foot Clan when they're recruiting all the teenagers.
No way.
Yeah, he's in there.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
didn't.
They played it at.
I didn't realize Kevin Nash was in 2 until I was reading the credits this time either. Yeah.
They look at me. Look at the
It's a
big
new
brain on
tidbit for me.
Paul. My brother pointed out to me like 3 years ago. They played the first Turtles at the movie theater on a Saturday morning. My brother's like, "Wait for it." I'm like, "Wait for what?" He's like, "Sam Rockwell." And then Sam Rockwell pointed out. I was like, and he's not a Turtles guy. Like, he's not a Turtles fan. He's just. And he's not really. You wouldn't, if you met him, you wouldn't be. He's like a movie guy. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't even know this.
Just a huge Sam Rockwell fan.
Apparently, who isn't though? He's an amazing dancer.
You said you started watching Clone Wars. Have you watched Star Wars Rebels yet?
No, I wanted to do, because chronologically Clone Wars is first, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I wanted to do them in order. I intend to get to Rebels eventually.
Okay. Because I'm fully caught up on Rebels right now. I'm still waiting for them to continue their season
four.
four.
Yeah.
Because they're on like that. They're still on that winter pause.
Yeah.
But I really like it.
I'm not totally into Clone Wars yet.
Clone Wars
It's
is
a
a
slow burn, and there's some
Yeah.
episodes that are just, there's a Jar Jar Binks episode I watched, and
there's more than one.
Padme episode, like they just
More than
weren't
one.
very interesting.
It's a roller coaster. Like that show is valleys and valleys and a really big peak and then some more valleys. Like it's how many episodes are in a season? I want to say like 20.
22 or something like that.
And there's maybe in the first 3 seasons like 4 episodes that I really really like in each season.
That's encouraging.
And then once you get to like season 4 when they start introducing some other things that I'm sure you probably know about already.
I might just skip ahead to some stuff then, because
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like there's a coherent story running through it for the most part. There's a lot of one-off episodes.
Most of the coherent story will come in a couple episode arcs. So I can even look at it for you and write down a list of episodes that I'd
would be
recommend.
Awesome.
Because
Because they'll do like an episode where it's just about like a little clone trooper squad, and then they're like half of them are dead and promoted the next episode, and then they never talk about them again. So I didn't really need to see that one. And then there's like Padme investigating like a black market shipping thing, and that went for like 2 or 3 episode little story arc. But
I couldn't-
ultimately it didn't seem like it affected the overall story.
I couldn't imagine sitting through that show again. Honestly, like I really enjoyed it when it came out. And then as it was coming out, like I'd be like, "Oh man, this actually is really bad." And then something would happen, I'm like, "Oh, it's really good." And then when it got to that huge story arc that is really good, I was like, "Wow, this show
Yeah, I might
has
need
redeemed
to,
itself."
might need to pick up some highlights. I don't know if I want to sit through too much
I've
more.
watched some quick like YouTube clips of it and stuff for Clone Wars, and I know it's a sign of the times because it was an older animated show. But Star Wars Rebels, like almost every episode, I really like.
Yeah, Star Wars episode or Rebels, I enjoy from beginning to where they are now. It's a very entertaining, solid. And
There is 1 or 2 episodes where they kind of go off the rails a little bit, where like it's not as interesting, but they do bring it back really quickly though.
Star Wars Clone Wars suffers from the same thing like the original or the new
The prequels.
prequels suffered from. There we go. Like it's not Star Wars to me. Like they're good. Like I liked episode 1 through 3 no matter what anybody says. But
Weird eye glare
Death
there.
stare.
it's like it's not Star Wars Rebels feels more like the original trilogy.
Yeah,
The characters, just like the aesthetic of it and stuff like that.
yeah, and the Clone Wars is very much feels like the prequels still.
And what was the third thing you said you watched?
The third thing I was watching, sorry,
Turtles,
Word.
Star Wars,
Troll Star Wars and Thor: The Dark World.
Thor: The Dark
Yeah.
World.
Yeah.
So back to Turtles really quick. Watch the second Turtles movie that Michael Bay one. It's not bad.
I've seen both of them.
Oh, okay.
I'm not into them.
I like the second one way more than the first one
Is it because Arrow's on there?
because Rocksteady and Bebop and Krang's okay.
Mm.
It's better than the first one.
I love the Krangs in the new cartoon. I
Yes.
think that
Yeah.
it's such a good homage to like the original Turtle, like comic books.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Thor: The Dark World. Thor: The Dark World is not the worst Marvel movie.
No,
No.
it's not the worst Marvel movie.
I enjoy Thor: The Dark World more than the first Thor movie.
I really like the first Thor movie.
I'm probably gonna be with Kelsey that if out of the 3 Thor movies, the second one's probably slightly the weakest, but I like the first one really good.
They fight scenes there weren't a lot of good ones, but there were some amazing ones. When Malekith was attacking Asgard for the first time,
Yeah.
that was really awesome.
That was really awesome.
The last fight scene with all the like warp portals, like as ridiculous as the concept was, it was really visually awesome to watch.
We need that to set up the Infinity
Oh yeah,
Gauntlet.
yeah.
Like, we
That
need
was
that kind
the
of
first
stuff.
one I think in the series where you really felt like there was all these extra dimensions and worlds and races that because he fought. I forget what they're called. The same thing that
The
Korg
Korg,
is. I fought one of those right off the bat. There was the Dark Elves, and then he just mentioned a whole bunch of other dimensions too.
Yeah, and we got to see the Collector for the first time,
Yeah, yeah,
which was awesome.
yeah. And he,
Yeah, because that was before Guardians of the Galaxy.
yeah.
I think that was the movie just before Guardians of the Galaxy. Because
Can't remember
that's
the
usually what
timeline.
they do is they always tease something for the next movie.
Yeah.
It could have been.
So-
I feel like there was a longer gap between.
I
that
feel
and
like it too. I
Guardians
feel
too,
like
but I can't
Captain
think off the top of
America
my head.
came out before Guardians.
Anyway,
Possibly.
it wasn't
Captain America
the worst
2.
movie. I enjoyed it. Not a lot of humor in it. Most of the other Thor movies are pretty. They got a lot of jokes. This one was less jokey.
I don't think the first one's funny at all. I hate the first one.
Whether you
so
think it's
much.
funny or not, they try and tell jokes, right? Like they had the scientist team. They were pretty
Yeah.
much there for comedy.
Yeah, a bunch of knuckleheads.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we get off the Marvel train for
All
a little bit?
right,
Because
we'll
that's,
get back on.
that's
We could be on
Avengers.
this.
We're gonna be
this is
opening
slippery
Pandora's box here.
slope Yeah.
Yeah. As for myself, I didn't get to do a whole lot of gaming. The only gaming I did was continuing on with Persona 5.
Oh, yeah,
Nice.
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 I'm right at the end of the casino area where I'm ready to send the calling card.
Mm-hmm.
And they're warning me, hey, why don't we wait until like the last day possible for us to send it? And I stopped at that point because I was actually getting worried that if I try to send it early, am I going to screw myself up? Or is the game just going to tell me, no, this is when we're going to send it?
If I remember right, that's like your last chance to do a lot of stuff. Like that's your point of no return kind of.
Okay.
So if you do
So
send
if-
the card, you know how you still have to wait until the day to fight the final boss. So you'll still have all the time to do your social stuff during the day too.
Okay. Because I was thinking that what I was going to do was I was going to go and finish grinding down into what's that area where it's Pandemonium or
Mementos.
I had just unlocked another area. I'm like I think it's the second last area before the very final area.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, you know what? I want to try to get to the very bottom before
Yeah.
we get to the point of no return.
It's I'm as soon as I said that, I realized I'm wrong. There's more after that. That's not the point of no return. You'll get another.
Okay.
There's more gameplay
But
afterwards.
the game is going to
That-
entice me to
yes.
actually grind myself.
There's like the big twist of the story.
Not in that way, Paul.
is where you're at now. But there is a significant chunk after that that's really cool as well.
Okay. Yeah. So I was worried that if the game's warning me, why don't you wait? And I thought, well, what happens if I send the calling card? Am I just going to immediately go into the boss fight? Or
No, you just don't. You can't go back into that dungeon, so you can still do your mementos and your regular day
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. So, otherwise, that was it for me. Just catching up on editing episodes and stuff. So,
Nice. Nothing wrong with just some Persona in a week.
Yeah.
with that, let's get into the world of the news breakdown.
It's news time.
It's news time. It's news time. First story that popped up this week: StarCraft players were forced to redo matches after a tournament gets seeding wrong.
That sucks.
That's
That
super messy.
super
yeah.
sucks.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like a day wasted, isn't it?
yeah, probably.
Yeah.
You know, we went over this with Street Fighter, the seeds that one time where the guy.
Yeah, the one player screwed up the
Yeah.
seating. Yeah.
And it sucks too because when this happened to, while matches were taking place, one player noted in the lobby chat that seeding for the brackets was incorrect. There were two issues making this worse. All but one match had already started.
Yeah.
So
Well, at least they
that-
caught it early, and it wasn't like final day. They
Yeah,
do
that
everything.
would suck. So
Yeah, that
It's-
would suck.
I think for this story though, it was just kind of that, you know, a planning committee can have all the best intentions and try to do the best planning they can, but
Well,
there's always something that's going to go wrong.
and you said there was two things that made this a problem. Was they'd already done all of them had started except for one, and there was nobody around to correct it and like set the
That's the
ship
worst
on
part,
course.
yeah.
That's the like everybody stops and people are like, wait, stop! We need some kind of admin over here, and it's like,
No.
and everybody's like, we can't stop, but we can't pause the game. Like,
Yeah.
what do we do? So.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's really, especially in StarCraft,
Yeah, that gets around like that's their original like esport there. Like you'd think they'd have that down to a
locked
science
in.
now.
Yeah, and it's because there was Twitter posts too of people saying, "Oh, I thought I was moving on because I won my match. Looks like I'm back to square one." It's like, ugh.
That's terrible feeling.
Especially like at that
Level.
level.
Yeah.
Well, StarCraft 2 is very competitive too, right? Because
Yeah.
like that's like, well, it was. I don't know if it still is, but it was like one of the top esports games.
Yeah, StarCraft 2 was
Because
huge.
I can recall seeing a
Both
video.
StarCrafts.
I think
Yeah.
it was
All two.
it was an Asian player playing StarCraft, and it was showing how quickly that he like uses the keyboard shortcuts and stuff. He had, I think, a base built in 2 minutes.
Macro is insane.
No, this will. I don't know if it was macros, but it's just simple like Control Shift this button, Control Shift this button. It was
Did you ever
mind-blowingly.
You ever watch Pure Ponage? It was an internet show from like the early 2000s, kind of before the YouTubes took over.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about a guy who was a really big RTS player. And he had a friend named FPS Doug, who was a really big first-person shooter. And he used to talk about how his macro was so good and his hand movements. And him and FPS Doug got in an argument one time. You have to check it out. It got turned into a Canadian, the channel Showcase. Got turned into a regular series for a season or two of half-hour episodes. And each episode's about a different video game that they play together and stuff like that. It's the original web series, FPS Doug. When you first see him, he's in a school playground. And he's like walking around throwing nades. It's funny. Check it out.
Avoid kicking the table here.
Yeah, I need it. I got too excited about FPS Doug.
Got too excited.
It's like a precursor to Video Game High School.
Yeah.
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 Fun.
Yeah. So get your shit together.
Yeah.
StarCraft 2.
Get yourself a bag. Get it all together.
Yeah. Get your shit. Put it in said bag. And let's have some proper tournaments. Like, I feel like people have to travel
Yeah.
huge portions of time.
Yeah.
It sucks so much. And I think only top 4 get their flights and accommodations covered if they get that high.
Well, because it was funny because as I was rereading the article here, I scrolled down to and I found the one story that we had covered a few weeks ago about the guy who lost in the tournament and then decided to sneak back in
The
under
Street
his
Fighter,
friend's name.
yeah.
And, and that screwed all their seating up too.
Yeah. That was just a dirty player. Like, this seems like tournament organizing gone wrong.
Yeah. Which it probably was nobody's fault. It was just something got missed.
Missing admin. It's his fault.
Yeah. Next story. Obviously, it is January, so the Consumer Electronics Show is currently on right now. And HTC has announced a new Vive headset for VR.
Yeah.
So it seems quite interesting because a lot of the things, because you recently got one for the store, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't actually got to play in it yet.
Right, you haven't gotten to
everyone
play it
else
yet.
has played it a little bit. Yeah.
But it's interesting though because they're actually addressing a number of the things with the previous one. A 78% increase in resolution on the headset.
My biggest issue with it is I want longer cords to it or wireless.
Well, I'm glad you asked that because they also have a wireless adapter.
Oh.
So you actually wouldn't need to have it wired anymore.
Did they announce if you can buy that adapter for the older model?
I don't know.
I will look that up
Retroactive?
after. That is very exciting.
It would be nice if they did do that, but they probably want you to buy a new headset.
No.
No.
Did you hear about the issues they had with power at CES?
Oh yeah, I heard.
They had-
I didn't see the full details, but they had something like
They
the
had
power
a
went out.
2-hour power out during a consumer electronics show, and it was just
wow.
like super embarrassing for the convention organizers because it's all about technology and they can't even turn the lights on.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah,
That's not good.
yeah. There was some pretty funny posts and like news feeds though about like Polaroid was there. And they're like, we don't need electricity. We're fine. And they're using like we have an analog product. Ha, ha, ha.
Oh yeah, because they got the
Yeah.
Polaroid cameras and
Yeah.
whatnot.
So there was some fun that came out of it, but yeah, that's super frustrating.
Funny how here's this awesome electronic show, but what's the one thing everybody needs? Power.
Yeah.
So that's quite funny. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what other stuff comes out. I know there's some other stuff I've seen on the Consumer Electronics Show. LG was showing their
8K,
roll up,
right?
their roll up television screens again.
Someone
Like
had an 8K screen there. I can't remember who it was.
Oh, 8K already exists.
Yeah, but it was like commercial level finally.
Oh, okay. I know my one editing teacher back at BCIT said that when it was been a few years ago, it would have been just before 4K was coming out, and he said to us basically, 4K is just on its way out, but I can guarantee you 8K and 16K already exist. So it's just
It's a
eventually.
matter of when they're cheap enough for your typical
Yeah, it's
person to
whenever they
afford
get out of testing phases or commercial use and come into.
one. Yeah, I still haven't picked up a 4K TV.
No,
We don't even have a 1080p TV at my house.
Well, I think we got to get
We
you one of those first.
720p because we bought our flat screen quite early.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no point to getting 4K yet.
No.
There's no 4K DVDs. There's no 4K gaming, to be honest.
They have a 4K Chromecast out now as well, and it's pointless.
Yeah.
Like there's no point.
Yeah, just because you can do 4K doesn't mean you have the content to do it with.
Yeah.
So we'll see eventually when that comes down the line. The next, probably the bigger story of this week, as of yesterday morning, Nintendo had a mini direct.
Surprise mini direct, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I was communicating with Kelsy while I was sitting at work, going back and forth because the rumor mill was just spinning.
Night before, Dustin was picking up some rumors.
So, and actually, it was funny how a certain number of the rumors came true. Actually,
A bunch didn't get even mentioned or breezed over though.
Paul, did you hear anything about this?
Yeah, I actually kind of followed up on it after you guys had talked about it. There's like two things that excited
You're
me.
the only
Yeah,
one of us
yeah.
that doesn't own a Switch, so was it interesting at all to you to watch?
It's interesting because I'm excited for what, like right now, the Switch is the only console I might buy, and maybe the last console I do buy, because Odyssey and Breath of Fire look so good.
Of the Wild.
Breath of Fire.
Breath of
are also
Fire.
cool.
Breath of Fire on the Switch probably would look pretty cool, wouldn't it?
Fire 5.
Well, here, let me
Yeah, run down it first.
Here,
and
I'll
then
break
we'll-
down. I'll break
yeah.
down everything. So, I'm just redoing my breakdown here through IGN's website here. But one of the last things they showed at the very end, Dark Souls Remastered for the Switch.
Which is a great idea.
Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, which means it has all the DLC from the Wii U and the 3DS
I know
version.
you're rolling your eyes at that, and I would too if I didn't play it. It is so freaking good.
It's actually really good.
so good.
I'd be excited for it if it was a new like if it was like 2. But it's just remastered. It's like that's my problem with this list. Is there's like
There's
2
so
new
many
games
ports on this
and
list,
it's all ports.
Well, here let's keep
and
going
that's
down
why
here.
it's like, oh, that's cool,
But like, did you play Hyrule Warriors on 3DS or
I
Wii U?
I didn't, but I want to. But I'm not excited about it being a port. Like,
Well,
why port it when you can just
well, see,
take an extra year?
because
Take an
that,
extra year and
that
say,
install base was so small on the Wii U that it makes sense to port all
See,
of these,
for-
I think.
but it's not exciting.
Before I continue the breakdown list, for me with the Hyrule Warriors thing, I never bought the 3DS one because the main reason why they had the 3DS one come out was so you would buy it and get the DLC for your Wii U version. I'm just glad they put everything all in this one.
Yeah, it's nice to have it all in one spot.
So-
Because I only played the Wii U one right when it came out, and I'm
Yeah.
not a DLC guy. So
I
haven't
didn't
played any
want to go
extras.
buy a $40-$50 game just to get free DLC of 3 extra characters.
The co-op in it too, couch co-op, is amazing.
Yeah,
Very,
that's
very good.
and I'd say the one thing that we should definitely, and it looks like they are doing it, is bring back the couch co-op strong.
That's what Nintendo actually is doing a lot of.
Yeah.
Because let's continue
And
down
we
the
need
list. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze
Yeah.
coming for the Switch
Same-
with multiplayer.
Same thing, a really awesome game. A lot of people
Yeah.
missed out on, so plop
It's
it out
it's
again. I get it's not exciting, but
And
I'm
you can play
so
as
happy
and
people
you can
get
play
to
as
play
Funky
this.
Kong in this one.
Yeah, they're adding some new
I
modes.
saw
I
that.
think,
It's a
too.
really Tropical Freeze is an awesome game. Looks good, plays good.
The soundtrack's amazing in
Yeah,
it too.
yeah, really good.
Super
soundtrack.
Mario Odyssey is getting some
The
little
balloon
extra
mode.
content. Luigi's Balloon World.
Yeah. When they showed the first picture with him with the balloons, I thought they were doing like a balloon fight kind of mini game
That'd
where
be
you
cool.
like float through it, but it's not that at all. It's like
Yeah,
hide
this
and
is
seek
it's
kinda
hide
game.
and seek,
Yeah.
but it's still extra stuff. So
It didn't interest me at all.
Mario Tennis Aces, so a new Mario Tennis game coming for the Switch.
It makes total
This one
sense.
brand
with the
new.
Joy-Cons. It's
Yeah.
really cool that they're doing story mode again because they haven't done that in a sports game for a long
Since
time.
like Mario Tennis 64.
Was there
no,
even
that
a
didn't
story
have a
mode?
story.
Yeah, but
Before
didn't-
that, the Game Boy one. The
Oh, no,
Game Boy
that's right,
Color
yeah.
one, yeah.
No, yeah, because the 64 one only had like you competed in tournaments. There was no
Yeah.
story
Yeah.
mode, right?
I love the 64.
Yeah, the Mario out of the Mario sports games, tennis is probably the premier one, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think tennis is more popular compared to like the golf and whatnot.
Yeah, golf was my favorite, but I think most people like tennis better, and it's miles ahead of like the baseball and soccer and stuff.
Yeah.
DK is joining Mario plus Rabbids, so as a character. Payday 2 is getting a
They're
Switch
digging
release.
deep for ports.
digging
now,
deep, yeah.
that's a deep cut.
Pokken Tournament getting new DLC fighters. The first one being released the end of January here is Aegislash with some new supporters, and then followed by Blastoise in March.
It's funny that they're supporting it better already here than they did on its original release.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The one I'm really excited for, Kirby Star Allies.
Yeah.
Kirby looks great.
That one's going to be an awesome co-op game. As soon as that comes out, we have to start playing that one.
Did they put a date on it?
It is March 16th for
Nice. That's not far
So
away.
not
Pretty
too
quick,
far away.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's going to be a
The
good
one thing
game.
I did see in the trailers, though, they did show that it's kind of like a return to Kirby 64 Crystal Chronicles, or
Crystal Shards.
Crystal Shards, where you can combine the different elements together and do different attacks.
You guys are messing up names. We got some Breath of Fire over here. We got some Crystal
Yeah,
Chronicles.
It's Crystal
over here.
Chronicles.
That's the Final Fantasy
Final
spin-off
Fantasy,
for
that's
the
right.
GameCube.
Yeah. Ys
8.
8.
That's cool. I like getting more JRPGs spread around.
Coming for the Switch. The World Ends With You Final Remix.
I tried really hard to get into this on the DS. I didn't like it at all. I don't know if I want to try it again.
It'll be interesting to
The
see.
style's neat, and it's supposed to be like the music's supposed to really fit into the gameplay and stuff, but everything about it sounds awesome, but it just didn't click with me.
There were also a bunch of extra indie games that were coming out on the Switch as well. So that
I think
was
Dark Souls was the big thing.
Big Souls.
Like, that was
Yeah, sorry, Big Souls.
Big
Dark Souls.
Souls.
Dark Souls would have been
It's
the
gonna be
big
Little
one.
Souls. It's gonna be on the tiny screen.
It's like Dark
And then-
Souls and Kirby are like the two big, and then tennis. I was like, oh, that will be fun. Like another good couch co-op
Yeah.
game to sit down and play against your friends with and stuff like that.
And then it wasn't in yesterday's direct, but it was in today's announcement that Detective Pikachu is coming to 3DS in North America with a the gigantic
Really?
amiibo. It's probably the size of Mega Man, actually.
Yeah, he's like 2 or 3 times the size.
So
of
there is a
regular
Detective
Amiibo.
Pikachu coming, but it was funny when I listened to the English dubbed trailer for it.
Yeah.
Pikachu has like such a deep like raspy
Ryan
voice
Reynolds.
to it. No, it's not Ryan Reynolds. It's somebody else. But when I was listening to it, I kept picturing Danny DeVito.
That's hilarious.
That's all I'm gonna hear now.
So I'm very curious to see what Ryan Reynolds is going to sound like as the
he probably sounded like himself.
character, and if that release you're talking about is going to coincide with the movie release. I'd assume
Probably be
would.
smart to put them within a few weeks
Yeah.
of each other at least. Yeah.
Well, no, the game is coming out later this spring.
When's the movie come out?
Yeah.
The movie's not slated for release yet, as far as I
Oh, I
know.
thought it was. I thought it was coming out this year.
So
I can't confirm that.
yeah,
Confirm or
can you-
deny?
Can
Can't
either
confirm or deny.
confirm or deny. So that's pretty much it for the news breakdown.
Yeah, it was small, tight. I liked the style of this direct where it's just like bang, 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 bang news. They don't have those goofy little skits in the middle
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah. The one thing I did know that you mentioned to me is like, why didn't they announce that they were going to do this?
Yeah, I would have loved to know
But
like a week out. Or
It kind of is awesome when, we're sitting here in January going, when are we going to hear Nintendo news? And suddenly, boom, Nintendo
drops
news.
they didn't
mic drop.
talk about Fire Emblem at all, which is one of their bigger releases that's supposed to come out
A
this
lot of people are thinking that they're going
a full
to
direct on it
hold
later?
it off until maybe a full direct or maybe an E3.
E3. Yeah.
So.
Did any of you guys watch Awesome Games Done Quick this week?
Oh, right. I
year.
forgot about that.
Mention it to me. I haven't had a chance to check anything out though.
Yeah, Games Done Quick was on this week. I watched speedrun of Blaster Master Zero.
Yeah.
They had a poll as to which extra DLC character to use, and Shantae won.
Cool.
So he had to play through as Shantae.
That's cool.
I'm trying to recall what else I quickly watched.
They had
There's
a
a bunch of
there was-
races I want to check
There was a
out.
bunch of interesting ones. I gotta wait for them to do like the archive version on
Yeah.
YouTube and go back and watch them.
So they did. It's the week started off really strong. Like they had a lot of like games that I was, for me at least,
Yeah,
I was super interested until kind of Wednesday, and then it was like one game Thursday. There's like 1 or 2 games today.
They had a NES block on like the 3rd or 4th day that looked just awesome.
Yeah.
I wanted to check out a whole bunch of those.
It'll be this Sunday, so hopefully this episode comes out at the right time. So maybe even like if you're watching this on Sunday tonight, quote unquote. The last game they're playing is Breath of the
Zelda.
Wild, all main storylines, and they're not allowed to use amiibos. And they have a poll up right now. Sorry, a donation poll up right now to play it on Master Mode,
Yeah.
which I think would be really interesting because Master Mode is not easy.
I think right now maybe they're doing a Mega Man 1 race.
Sweet. I love seeing the races.
Oh, that's the Mega Man Relay one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it's like if the person dies, they got to pass the controller on and move to the back of the line or something.
Yeah. Which is cool. I like the races too. There's not a lot of the speedrunners that I really like on it. Like Sinister's not there, but he's kind of done all his games.
I was looking at a bunch of because I usually recognize a lot of the Mega Man runners, and it seemed like a lot of new names
Yeah.
I wasn't familiar with this
And there
year.
was a lot of PC games this year as well.
Yeah.
Like a lot of games done. And there usually is, but
They don't get featured as prominently.
yeah.
Yeah.
But this year it's like huge. Like I think the last couple days are
This-
primarily PC games.
Probably good, like fresh dose of games and viewers, maybe.
Well, and the other thing too is like, how many years has this been? 4 years, maybe. Awesome Games.
maybe 5 or 6 even.
They've probably beat a lot of them to death. Like
Yeah.
Sinister wasn't there, and Sinister usually runs.
they also do
Mike
this like
Tyson's
every
and,
like
Yeah.
what is it,
Renegade.
3 to 4
We've
times
always
a
seen,
year.
like, there's always Zelda speedruns. There's always Mega Man speedruns. There's always the Mario speedruns.
Contra.
Metroid's always huge
Yeah.
there. Yeah. Contra, they try and spice it up once in a while. They'll do like 2 players, 1 controller and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and blindfold runs and things.
But yeah,
Well, the thing is too, like because of Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild and stuff, there are a bunch of new games that are coming out that
Yeah.
they haven't put up yet. Like they haven't done.
Breath of the Wild speedruns are really cool to watch them
Yeah.
use the physics in that game to really exploit it.
But I think when like the summer games done quick comes up, like there's probably going to be some sort of Mario Odyssey race.
There
I think
better
it-
be, yeah.
I
it'd be
assume
fun.
there will be. Yeah.
It would be nice to see that because like as Kelsey and I were talking, like was it every day they're finding new.
Yeah,
new
they keep
routes, right?
rerouting that game because there's so many moons to get. It's like, well, you can save 10 seconds if you go get these moons in this order, and so every day it keeps like changing.
Yeah,
I
I'd really like to see a 4-player race on that.
I watched. It was the speedrun for Star Wars Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast.
Yeah.
Or not Jedi Outcast, Jedi Academy, which came out in like 2004 maybe.
Sounds about right.
And they were saying how people were still coming up with new level strats as new as last week. And the guy that was running it, like the guy sent him a document to read. He was like, I don't have enough time to practice this. And then one of the guys that was on the couch behind him came from Germany just to help him learn that strat for this run.
That's intense.
Yeah, I was like, wow, like that's an old game. You'd think it'd be done to death by now, but
Yeah.
That must
Still-
be nice to have the money to, go. Oh, hey, I'm going to America for a week.
for awesome games done
For
quick.
awesome games done
Help a guy
quick.
kill some
Bye.
Jedis
Yeah.
quicker.
Exactly. Yeah, I love awesome games done quick. I look forward to it every year.
I look forward to watching what happens with this Breath of the Wild run.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
So I'll be definitely trying to keep an eye on that on
And the
Sunday.
world records, there's usually a couple world records broken.
Yeah, it's not uncommon.
Mm-hmm. All right, well that does it for news. Let's get into the main bread and butter of today's subject: the best controller ever. So why don't we first set what's our criteria for the controllers?
Comfortability.
I was gonna say for me, it's gotta be comfortable in your hands. It just has to feel right.
What about comfortable with the rest of your body?
Yeah.
There's that too.
Because like with a Wii remote and nunchuck, like I've played on the couch, like arm over top, and like just maximum comfort. But you can't do it with another controller.
Well, that's sometimes also like abusing like the motion sensor
Well,
because
if you're
like
really
if you want
good
if you want to pass me the Wiimote.
Yeah, it depends on the game. Like you could play
Because
like a Mario
people,
Galaxy like that.
Because look at people when they were like playing Wii bowling and stuff. People figured out they could just go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
But
not talking about a
that's-
motion control game. I'm talking about just like a standard
Oh,
run
yeah,
and
that's
jump
true.
kind
Yeah,
of game.
'cause, like,
yeah, you can
you
get
just-
super comfy with that one. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, for me, the control's got to feel comfortable. Like
Sure.
you can't feel like your hand's gonna
You
cramp
want
up
to be
at
able
any
to play
time.
for more than an hour without having to put it down because you don't feel right.
And ideally, it needs to be comfortable for all games.
Yeah.
So a lot of controllers, like, I feel that this controller, the GameCube controller,
It's great for some games.
and it's too spread out. Like your thumbs are doing a marathon here. There's too much.
When you play like Mario Sunshine and Smash Brothers, like that works really well for those. You play like Mega Man Legacy Collection, it's atrocious for that.
Mm-hmm.
See, for my own personal like best controller ever, I had GameCube in the running.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to pass it over, the one thing I don't like about the GameCube though, it's always catches me whenever playing like say Mario Party or something like that, is when you have some sort of quick time event and they want you to press a difference between the Y and the X.
And they look almost
to me, they
identical.
look exactly
Yeah.
the same, and I can never remember
Yeah.
which one is which.
I've never had any issues with that. I don't like the shoulder triggers on it either. They're
Either do
too
I.
deep.
Yeah, they're too
Too
deep.
deep.
This was never in the running for me. This
However, though, for wireless controllers though, the Wavebird I really like.
That was the first
This is the
like
first-
really good one.
Yeah. I remember testing it out and going down. My friend had a fairly big house. He was on the second floor, and we would walk down the street, and he'd hang out his window, and we'd play and see how far we could get away with still playing it. And we got like half a block, maybe more away, and we could still.
It was really fun to mess with your friends too when you switch the channel to their channel and like
Yeah.
make them run off a cliff really quick and then
Yeah.
back to your channel. What happened?
It was a fun controller. It was different. I don't feel it was balanced correctly.
Do you know? Are you guys even like are any wired controllers in your running, or does that take out the comfortability for you guys?
No, I do have wired controllers, but then
Why-
it takes out functionality for me.
Right.
Yeah, because
That's probably
'Cause
next on the criteria.
Because like I did pull out, but it seems like on our poll we're getting a lot of like modern controllers being voted up high. Like there's not really a whole lot of votes on old ones because like sure we started with
That's one of my favorites.
old
well,
school
let's stick
controllers.
with our criteria before we get into the polls and stuff like that.
For
So-
Okay,
for
so
me,
yeah,
if
comfortability, functionality.
if it was cabled, it's got to have enough length
Yeah.
that you can sit a decent.
You just put
ways
the,
away from
You
your-
put the system in front of the TV, and then you sit in front of it.
Sometimes you didn't need to though. Sometimes you had a controller that was just the right length.
You weren't living in the 80s.
Like the
then.
Xbox controllers had a huge cord on them.
They
They
had
were
that
long.
stupid
like not
breakaway
the
cable, though.
360, I should say. But yeah, they did have that charge breakaway cable as well,
Yeah.
and the normal Xbox had the breakaway cable as well.
I
That was
hate
dumb.
that.
Yeah, I hated
Yeah.
that as well.
They get lost all the time.
The Xbox One controller is not even in conversation.
That's my favorite of the Xbox ones by a
No
huge
way,
margin.
The 360 controller.
No, feel this right next to it. Touch them together.
This isn't the original Xbox.
No, it's the Xbox One. You said
Oh.
Xbox One.
Oh, sorry, the
Yeah,
original
Xbox is trash. That
The,
was,
the original Xbox One, it was too big. It
Yeah.
was.
and then even the shrunk one's terrible. It's awful. Those white and black buttons and the D-pad's awful. It's not a good
I
controller.
think for me, I'm trying to think for a controller length because I grew up with a lot of Nintendo stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I did occasionally play some Sega stuff and PlayStation, but I'm trying to think between the Super Nintendo controller and the N64 in terms of cable length. Like
They're
which
pretty similar. The
they're
Genesis has a much shorter cable on
Yeah.
a lot of the controllers. That one was a bit of a pain
360
sometimes.
controller's better.
but I think
No.
the Super
Because
Nintendo
of
one.
the position of these, I feel my thumb has to jump across too much to that one. It's a bigger gap, and to this.
I feel like
Touch
This
that
is
D-pad.
tighter.
This garbage. That's really good.
for controller length, like the length of the cable, I think the Super Nintendo one was probably the best
Yeah.
It's good
because
yeah.
it was like what length was it, like 7-8 feet?
Oh, not that
No,
long.
not that
that's
long?
5
huge.
feet
That's-
maybe.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe.
I'm trying to think how long it's been forever since I've really used them, but
This is the Super Nintendo controller. Is my favorite retro. Well, not retro, but like 90s, late 80s controller ever made.
Mhm.
The Nintendo came out.
Not late 80s.
Well.
That's all 90s, baby.
Yeah, but Nintendo, that was late 80s.
yeah,
Nintendo.
Nintendo.
And then Sega. And stuff. So
Well, because like
this controller-
even this original Nintendo controller, that is a major upgrade because the curvature of making it
Yep.
be able to
The-
conform to your hands and
The
stuff.
late Nintendo controllers actually had this curve before
Yeah.
the Super Nintendo. They had put out they call them the dog bone controllers. They had like a bump on both the top and the bottom though.
Okay.
a lot of PC controllers looked like that for a long time as
Yeah,
well.
and then they started copying PS2 controllers for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was this. This was a huge jump. Like this was kind of revolutionary. Like the simplicity of it, and it just being not a joystick. The buttons weren't in weird
Yeah.
positions.
And I remember so many people as a kid calling this like pass me the joypad or the joystick all the time, even
Yeah.
though it didn't have that on it.
Like yeah, up until this was when this released. This was the best controller that had come
That's
out.
still really high for me.
It's
Just
really
the
high for me as well.
simplicity.
Yeah, it's really high for me. And then this came out. This took its place and is still really high for me. It works really well with all games. It sits really comfortable in your hand. It's light. Everything was within grasp.
The only thing for me with the Super Nintendo one though was again I got confused as to which one was X and which one was Y. Because whenever
never had that
you're playing a game, it's like press the X button, press the Y button. I'd always have to quickly look down to see a difference between the two. A and B was always easy to figure out.
Within a very short period of time, like all the prompts on Super Nintendo games are always the same. So you could play 10 minutes of a game and you'd look down once and be like,
Yeah.
press the Y button. So I'd always commit to memory. I'd never have to look at my controller again. So I'd commit to memory where I had to go, what buttons did what.
Yeah.
And then, and the D-pad,
So really good on both of
it's
those.
they've an upgrade from this. Like the D-pad was really good on this one, and the Genesis controller.
Now my favorite is the 360 kind of D-pads.
The problem with these two D-pads is the corners are so sharp on them.
I like that actually.
I don't. When they released this one, especially being a Street Fighter fan,
I was gonna say
Yeah.
for fighting games, that's probably where it comes in the worst.
Yeah.
You
doing
take your blisters, man. You
360s.
build those calluses up.
I used to have wicked blistered thumbs from the PlayStation 2 controllers or
Yeah.
PlayStation 1 controllers.
Yeah.
This D-pad is so good. It's so smooth, and things just work so well on it. I really like this D-pad. This is really high up.
Now-
Functional, comfortable.
You played on the Saturn controller because it's kind of a hybrid of the Super NES and the Genesis controllers.
It's like the Genesis release controllers like this that were their super pads.
They
And
didn't
had,
have
like,
the
turbo
they didn't have
buttons.
the angle on them though. They were
They were
more,
round,
yeah,
yeah.
rounded. Yeah.
So
Other than the D-pad,
don't.
I really like that. Controller.
swinging back to our controller criteria here. So obviously we want something that's comfortable, something that
Functional.
obviously the buttons are accessible and don't feel like your hand is cramping. If it was cabled, that it needs to have a decent length on it.
Yeah, that's functionality.
Can't obviously get in the way or can't be too long because you don't want a huge cable getting in the way, but you want something just right.
Another big criteria for me is durability.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have this weird thing where I feel like things should last forever, even though obviously there's moving parts are going to wear out eventually. But I've got like NES and Super Nintendo controllers I've had for decades now that still work fantastic.
That was the last generation of a like truly durable controller.
Yeah,
I
once
feel.
we started getting things with like rumble in them and joysticks, there's so many things that stop working after 1 year sometimes.
Nintendo
sometimes less.
64 controllers would wear out so fast.
Those joysticks would. The rest of the controller, super solid. But yeah, those joysticks would they become a mess pretty quick.
I know I've seen too many PS2 controllers that have come and gone because I had a friend of mine. He was the one who owned the Sony system. I owned the Nintendo stuff, and the amount of PS1, PS2 controllers we would go through was atrocious.
Really, I didn't go too many PS1 and 2.
I thought they were
but
solid.
3 and 4, like holy crap, those ones just they're a nightmare. They fall apart like crazy.
I haven't had that big of an issue with those ones yet.
Well, when we start talking about them specifically, I'll be a little more specific about my issues with them. But yeah, they're
I feel that's probably a good criteria. Comfortability,
functionality,
durability.
The one thing too, it also depends on what game you're playing too, because I see you have your Neo Geo pad here, and like to me that is very much like that is meant for
It's a
arcade,
fighter.
for fighter,
Yeah.
fighters,
Or arcade shooters.
style
yeah,
shooters
shoot 'em
and
ups,
stuff.
running guns. Yeah,
But a lot of these other controllers here, they obviously they kind of found the common ground between racing games, fighting games,
the thing about the Neo
action
Geo
games.
controller is it suits every game that's on that system because they don't have like strategy games, you don't have role playing games, so it really didn't need to function for those genres.
Well, and it'd work fine for an old like a role playing game. Like there's nothing
You could do it.
Yeah.
They just didn't come out on the system. So
and there's
don't worry
nothing.
about
You
it.
don't need anything else for a role playing game than what that pad offers you.
Yeah.
Well, even the N64 one, if you want to pass it over to me. I think it's only, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was only like 2 or 3 N64 games that ever used this D-pad.
I'm sure there's
Everything else was
more
all
than
here.
that, but yeah.
For me, the only thing I can remember right now is Kirby 64
Wrestling games.
was
Yeah, you
one of
used
the
it a
only
lot
ones
for
that
the
used this.
wrestling
You
ones. There
never
was, like,
ever
5
used the
wrestling games
joystick.
there.
Yeah.
So it was just funny how we had this controller, but like very rarely did anybody ever use this D-pad.
It's one of those ones that's so unintuitive too when you give people that for the first time and they hold it incorrectly almost every single time.
Granted, though, I did like the expansion idea, though.
Yeah, that was pretty.
Rumble
important at the
pack,
time,
memory
Memory
cards,
Transfer pack.
the transfer pack for like Pokemon and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always thought that was a great idea.
Okay, so we have our criteria. What we should have done was discuss this together before it started, and came up with an actual list of top 5 that we'd go through and give our reasons as a
Well,
group why we gave it place number 5, place number 3.
My idea was that at least each of us here present 2 or 3 controllers that you think should be in the top.
Okay.
For me, and it can be retro, it can be modern, it can be whatever you want, whatever you feel like have been the best controllers ever.
Do you want to do the poll first and then go into ours?
Yeah, I can do that. Give me a second here just to re-pull it back up here.
I also got to.
So last time I looked, I think PS4 was running away with it.
It was. Let me just make sure I reload the current sitting on it. So we put up a poll on the Power Up Prince George website, or the Facebook page, asking players to give us what they thought was the best controller ever and some reasonings behind it. Currently in the lead right now is PS4 with 12 votes, followed by a tie between Xbox One and GameCube.
Which is, they're drastically different. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Some
ones
of
to
the
put
comments we
together.
had down below, Atlee Miller, a fellow X-Wing player that I know pretty well, I thought the PS4 controller looked weird at first, but it fits perfectly in my hands. It's
Still
very
looks weird.
comfortable, easy to use. I would say this is the best controller for taking out Rebel Scum.
I'd say that one still looks weird. Not just at first. It's still an unusual looking controller.
Chris Barna, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly.
Yeah, I know Chris. Yeah.
The N64 controller was the first, as far as I remember, that had the mini joystick, and it was great effect in GoldenEye and Perfect Dark.
There's obviously joysticks before that, but I think like there was the Atari, there was the Television, Coleco. They all had forms of joysticks.
Tyler Chrome, oops, saying that again correctly. PS4 controller fits in my hands perfectly, not too small, not too big. Also, the joysticks and buttons aren't too far apart either. Personally, I think it has the best triggers. Overall, I end up gaming in comfort without my hands cramping. And then last one, Miles Jackson. The ergonomics of the Xbox 360, Xbox One controllers have always been the best in my opinion. The handles fit inside my palms perfectly and rest there nicely. The stick layout is my favorite as I can control with my index finger from above and use the thumb on the D-pad when needed. The triggers feel great and I feel like my finger won't slip off when I'm holding it down. So, a decent...
little variety.
A little variety, but everybody's bringing fair points to all the controllers. So a lot of people... runaway winner right now, they're thinking the PS4, which I'm kind of in agreement is one of my top favorite ones. This current design of it, though, I personally not a big fan of it. I actually like the PS3 controller better.
In terms of looks, or you mean like comfort?
In terms of comfort and functionality of the buttons, I don't like that big middle button.
Yeah, I don't like that.
I don't like it. It is a touchpad. And too many games that I've played on PS4 that require to use that as a touch mechanism never work.
Every time I try and push the options button, I hit that touchpad too and pull up a different menu than I intend to.
Mm-hmm.
Every time. It's far too sensitive, or the button's too close together. I do like the rear triggers on the PS4 controller better than the rear triggers on the PS1, 2, 3.
Just hang down ones.
Yeah.
No triggers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They look like this controller looks ridiculous, but it does feel, I think, a little better than the 1, 2, and 3.
But I like the PS3 controller because it's funny how it's still very much the same as the PS1 and PS2 controllers were.
There is a 6-axis and a DualShock 3 as well.
I'm gonna go with the DualShock one.
There's a double. There's a 6-axis DualShock 3.
Okay, not the 6-axis one. I hated the 6-axis.
Just because it's so light?
No, because it was not responsive. The 6-axis thing where you were trying to do motion stuff never responded correctly the same way as like Nintendo ones did. So.
I just hated how light the 6-axis felt. It just felt like a cheap Chinese knockoff controller. Going to durability, though, on PS3 controllers, we get those broken in more than anything at the store. Yeah. The triggers, constantly, one drop, and those triggers are gone. The joysticks, the ring around them gets smashed really often, and the actual rubber on them falls off a lot.
And it wears off, too.
Which is a huge problem with the PS4 controllers, too, is the rubber that they use on the joysticks. It gets worn off real easy.
Mm-hmm.
This one doesn't feel good to me for some reason.
What's one on your list?
One of my top ones is actually the 2600, just because it's not that. Look, that's the Jaguar.
This one?
I brought this as an example of bad controllers. You don't put a calculator on the bottom of your Genesis.
I think this is an example of
Accountant Simulator 2600.
You told me a number and I didn't know what you were talking about.
Both Atari.
You threw out some numbers and names.
It's just so simple. You can't really screw it up. There's not much to it.
One button, one controller.
Yeah, you know what to do immediately. Controller cord is a little long, but the TV and power cords on the Atari are ridiculously long because they intended for you to sit it in the middle of the living room and you sit close to the console.
Yeah.
So that was also like one of like the very first gaming consoles.
This is the first big one to take off. There were a few before it, but this is the first like mainstream one everyone wanted to have in their house. Yeah.
And those controllers were kind of like this.
Coleco and Television, same thing. They're like a calculator on the bottom, and the joysticks aren't nearly as good. Those little discs are not as good as having an actual joystick in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. and there was a bunch of Atari games that come with bundled controllers. I didn't count any of those because I assumed we wanted like the mainstream ones that most people would have played with.
The OG, no Mad Cats.
But you know what to do with this right away. it's super durable. Like these still work like great, and you can whip them at the wall and they'll still work fine.
Give it a try.
I love
As soon
it.
as you donate a controller, Paul, we'll do that.
And they're really responsive too, like which is not common at the time. A lot of the Intellivision and Coleco stuff just doesn't feel good. You're trying to run up the ladder in Burger Time, and you're kind of stuck on the top. Like I didn't have that issue with a lot of 2600 games.
This one here, I just feel like because you'd be holding the box like this, that your hand would start getting cramped up a little bit for hitting the thumb there. But it's actually not too bad. Like
It does suck if you're left-handed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So. Well, actually, no. If you were left-handed, couldn't. Oh no, because now you're
Your up
front
is
edge.
changing your up.
because
Yeah.
you've changed your up and your downs now.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Because I remember playing that with even on the table.
Yeah,
With
you
this
could
finger.
put it on your lap. You could put it on a table. You could hold it in your hand. Yeah.
Right. How about you, Paul? What's one of your tops?
Versatile.
Are we going in like a descending?
You can go in
least
whatever
to-
order you want.
Kelsey, were you doing least to best?
No,
Worst to
I just
best?
picked one of my favorite three.
Okay, well, my number 3 would probably have to be the Nintendo, just because of its
The original.
The
NES?
original one?
the original
Nice.
NES, because it, like I said earlier, it revolutionized what a controller should be. It's comfortable. It all like Mario is super responsive on this thing. Like all the games worked really well for all the stuff they were putting out.
It's just like the Atari joystick too, where it's not complicated enough. Like you always know what to do right
Yeah.
away. It's one of these two buttons.
Yeah,
If you're not doing what you want with this one, just push the other one.
Those ones were pretty durable too, right?
extremely durable. I had more systems fail than I had.
It's like I'm pretty sure you could swing that around your head, knock somebody out with it,
I've
and
been
keep
using
going.
the same controller for 2 decades now, and it's still amazing. And
this controller
yeah, yes, that specific one. Yeah, that one's
still works.
probably would.
No, I like the. I think this is the first controller that had the soft rubber for the start and the like. They feel so good to press in.
Those,
as well.
those are the only parts I've ever seen get like kids would pick them off
Yeah,
once in a while.
yeah.
And then you couldn't push start. But outside of that, I really like that controller.
Yeah, I've
a
had
lot, too.
dogs chew on Nintendo controllers and they work fine still. And yeah,
And you can use that like a arcade stick too. Like I know it's unusual, but some games I'll play, like hand down like that.
Yeah.
It works really good.
no, I really like this controller. I like the look of it. Like that is a classic image as well. You have wallets, belt buckles, phone cases,
Shirts, yeah.
T-shirts. Everything looks like that. This is. I'm gonna go. This is my number 3 on favorite controllers. That's number 3.
All right. Well, I guess that swings it back to me. I like the PS4, but I felt like I like the PS3 more.
That's really weird to me. I think
But this
almost
one,
universally,
it's,
people would
it's
go that
pretty close. Like, because with the exception
what
of the
is
touch,
it that pulls it over the edge for you? You don't like the touch.
I don't like the large touch button.
Okay.
And I think for me, because
So rather than this one being better, you just think that one's worse? You think they dropped the ball with the upgrade?
some certain parts, like the PS3 and the PS4, if they were side by side and it's like you need to pick one, I probably would go for the 3, but the 4, like the change and like how they change like the grooves and how it fits in your hand works a lot better.
It looks silly, but it
I
does
just
feel a little
don't
better.
like this large massive touch button that is kind of useless.
I don't like how
The share button's pretty cool though, but
I never used that.
not many people use it though, because that was one of the things though, is by putting in that share button, they got rid of the select.
Yeah.
I don't like that it's options instead of start too. That's just a little pet peeve.
Um,
One thing that's really weird and probably doesn't bother anyone else, but before I had eye surgery, I had glasses, and when I played PS4 games, I'd be playing something, and then I'd go to push my glasses up, and I would blind myself with this light, and that happened multiple times. And then
You know you can turn that down in the
I
settings.
didn't know
right?
until after I got my eye surgery, so I didn't even need eye surgery. Apparently, I could have just turned the light off.
that's why you needed eye surgery.
Yeah,
Um,
lasers.
I don't like how the shoulder buttons. It's more rounded, so the transition from this to this, it's very minuscule, but it's noticeable to me.
I don't play
Like it's
shooters,
more of a stretch.
The triggers are never much of an issue for me. I actually like the PS4 ones better. I thought they felt a little
Metal Gear Solid.
less like I was going to slip my finger off them.
But anyway, getting back to one of my second ones. If you want to pass me the 360 one, with the exception of like their batteries and stuff, you know, it's kind of funny how Xbox kind of got one of the first like kind of comfortable feeling controllers. Like even though it is weird having the thumb pad change places as compared to say the PlayStation controller.
Yeah, do you guys have a preference for having the sticks lined up or off-centered?
I like them off-centered like that.
I like them lined up.
But I play a lot more shooters.
True.
And it feels better
for me,
with them off-centered.
I don't mind either way. Because it all depends on what you're playing. Because like I've played a lot of Halo games and stuff, so like I'm used to using this controller playing Halo.
Right.
But then switching back over to here, I don't mind being more balanced instead of being asymmetrical design. So, but I think the 361 does deserve, a
Recognition.
nomination of some form. It just sucks how many batteries you went through.
I was going to mention that we didn't talk about rechargeable versus batteries. I actually prefer batteries. I hate sitting down to play and I forgot to charge the controller, and then I've either got to cable it, which usually the cables they send you aren't very long, or you.
The Xbox had really long, nice cables for the 360.
It depends on the
They
controller.
were all right.
The chargeable ones.
It depends on the controller though too, because it's a little too new, so I didn't want to put it in my list. But the Switch Pro controller,
That's on my list.
I love using that right now. I have such a hard time switching back to the Joy-Cons when I'm so used to playing this, because when I play my Switch, I'm usually on a TV, and this one it feels really nice, and the battery on these things lasts forever right now.
Yeah, the thing.
I find myself,
get a week out of it.
maybe having to charge these once a month.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So
As far as modern controllers go, this is my number 2 on my list. I think this beats anything Xbox and PlayStation have put out. The one exchange I would love is if they just switch the D-pad and the joysticks. I do like having them lined up.
kind of do a PlayStation kind of look.
Yeah,
to it.
just switch those and steal that little development tip. But yeah, you've got your amiibo functionality on here too.
Actually, oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's built into it.
Yeah.
cool.
The triggers are, I think, the best I've ever used. The buttons, I love when they're clicky and not mushy.
Yeah.
Xbox has a lot of mushier buttons. I prefer the clicky stuff on these ones. And this also has one of my favorite D-pads for as far as modern consoles go. PlayStation 1's okay. I hate the original Xbox 360. The one's getting a little better with the D-pad, but I do play a lot of retro style stuff. And even when I play RPGs and you're just going through menus and stuff, I'd rather have a D-pad. So it's got the best D-pad that's come out in a long time.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on the same boat with the.
I hate when you switch that and it's just the total round one. Ugh. Ugh.
Wait, what did you do?
You can switch it from being it sticks out, and
Yeah.
you can turn it, and it's flat.
Kind of.
Is that on every 360 controller?
No, just on
Not
certain
the,
ones
like,
after a certain time.
First 2 years, I don't think they produce them like
Okay,
that.
I
Everything
never
after that does that.
knew about that.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that kind of downgrades my Xbox idea.
I liked it. I like when it's up like this because it's up more than it was on the original controllers. But having it switch like that, like Kelsey said, it's
It's the worst.
it's useless.
Yeah.
Okay, Paul, how about you? What's number 2?
It was really close between. I used a lot of the 360. I really like the 360 controller. I played a lot of shooters on it. It was super functional. I don't like. Actually, I started to game more 2D like Mega Man games with the analog stick,
Ugh,
and I thought it was
weird.
I really like it. I find it's more responsive to what I want to do.
It's not true.
The 360 was high on my list. The PlayStation 2 was high on my list.
I like DualShock 2 a lot.
Because of its durability, functionality. Like, it felt really good for fighters. It feels really good for RPGs. It feels really good for platformers. And I'm probably going to have to give the edge to PlayStation. And I'm probably going to have to give the edge to PlayStation 1. Because
But
Now,
the
PlayStation 1 original or the one
DualShock,
with
yeah.
the joypad? With
probably the joypad, which is essentially the PlayStation 2 controller.
Yeah.
the DualShock. That's when they first introduced it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I had a PlayStation. I had a PlayStation 2. Besides the Super Nintendo, like I do play a lot of Nintendo, but the Super Nintendo I play a lot of. And the PlayStation, if I'm not on my PC and I have a controller that's kind of like, I have a 360 controller and a controller like this for my PC when I play PC gaming. If I'm gonna play on console, I'm playing PlayStation, which is usually this, RPGs, fighting games, and it's a great controller. Does everything I want. The D-pad's really responsive. Yeah, I seldomly use the analog sticks on it. Like I said, for shooters I would play on my Xbox.
You mentioning fighting games, I always had a problem with the left triggers for fighting games. I could never hit them as responsibly as I wanted to on PlayStation controllers.
The-
I really like this setup, like when you got your low, medium, high.
Yeah.
But then when you need your others for like blocking or runs or rolls or whatever game you're playing,
Yeah.
I could never do those ones like I wanted to.
You could usually set it up to be like an arcade, like 3-button setup or a 4-button setup.
Mm-hmm.
So, like for Street Fighter, I used to play with my strongs on this side and my utility buttons on this side, but I switched it to Super Nintendo style. Then these 2 bottom buttons would be my utilities.
Right.
And then I eventually got to your kind of mindset, and you can usually switch any game to like 2-button roll, 2-button grab, 2-button this. So I eventually phased those out for fighting games pretty much entirely.
I never remap controls on anything for some reason.
I like to play Street Fighter Alpha 3, which is probably my favorite Street Fighter game.
Mm-hmm.
Came out with the original button style was this: strong punch, strong kick,
Yeah.
and then utilities. I switched it to Super Nintendo, and I still play all my Street Fighter games like that. I prefer it much better. So my number 2 goes to the PlayStation or PlayStation 2 DualShock controller for the amount of use I've gotten out of it, and just how.
I like how once they hit that layout too, they've kept that same design for everything.
Yeah,
Like,
and it
Well,
works.
that's
is
one of the
really
reasons why I like the PlayStation 1. It's almost like looking at an alligator, or an alligator hasn't evolved since the dinosaur
Yeah.
age because it's just so perfect.
Yeah.
And that design of keeping 2 joypads, controls here, and
Yeah.
functional shoulder buttons
It's
works
light.
great.
Yeah.
The wire was not the longest.
I
but
thought
it
the wire was fantastic.
Yeah, it was
6
functional.
feet or
It
so,
used
yeah.
super. Like I could play it very well. I still play it. Yeah, I really like. For my Raspberry Pi, I have the Retro Pi. It's all PlayStation 3 controllers. Just because it has the USB, you can plug it in and map
Yeah.
it to the Raspberry Pi. Like the 360 does get love, but it was limited for pretty much fighting games or pretty much shooters,
Right.
stuff like that. Grand Theft Auto.
Let's
Which is
get-
the bread and
let's-
butter on the system.
Let's get
Yeah.
into our let's speed this up here and get into our third picks, whether they're our number ones or not. I think an honorable mention, the Wii U gamepad. It's not in my top 3, but I think it deserves an honorable mention because I like the idea of having the screen and stuff built into it. But the battery did die on it pretty quickly. Like I still haven't
yeah.
gotten the updated battery for mine yet, so the battery does die pretty quick. But playing games like WarioWare and stuff where you actually need this drawing stuff on screen and stuff, and Nintendo Land and
Even
stuff.
just playing off the TV was fantastic.
Yeah, that was a great idea too. For me though, if you want to pass me the N64 and the Super Nintendo controllers. So for me, like these would have been the 2 controllers where I probably started my gaming life. Because for me, my first console was a Super Nintendo. I loved playing Mario Paint on that one, but that was with the
Mouse,
with the NES mouse on
Swatting
it.
some flies.
But like the Super Nintendo controller was really cool, and like it feels pretty good. But I think for me, when I was like really into gaming, was when Mario 64 came out. So I'm so used to an N64 controller. It's just
Even though a third of
you
it
hand this
is,
to me, I feel like I'm riding a bike.
even though a third of it you don't even need.
Even though a third of it I don't use unless I'm playing Kirby.
But I like the Z button underneath. That is,
But yeah, the Z button underneath,
fantastic.
the option of doing the expansion slot, whether it's a memory card, rumble pack, or the transfer pack for Pokemon and stuff. And just the button layout was actually pretty quick because you knew exactly what you were doing. Playing Zelda, playing old Smash Brothers, playing Paper Mario Party and whatnot. So I think I have to give
Even
the
with
N64 one of my tops.
the joystick is not last. Even like obviously Mario Party just shreds it to pieces, but
Yep.
even other games it wears out quicker than any other
Anything, yeah.
joystick.
The
I've
durability is
ever
not
run.
there at all.
Well,
It's surprising to me that
It'd be funny that
that's so high.
if they replaced that with one of these ones, like kind of like, actually it's funny actually, I think it was somebody who was telling me, and they were like, oh well, this middle section of the N64 controller is so much like a nunchuck. And I'm like, yeah, it pretty much is. You just add one extra button to it and that's it.
Totally.
But for me, because this is more of like a personal pick.
Gotcha.
Not in
Yeah.
terms of like, yeah, I agree that this probably has been destroyed pretty quick.
And it sounds like
But for me, for the feel and like nostalgia, that's why it's in my top 3.
yeah, and your pick is heavily based off of the games that you played with the controller, not necessarily the controller,
Yeah,
which is
because
fair.
someone hands that to me, I can play Star Fox 64. I can play Mario 64. I can play whatever you want.
Nintendo
no problem.
does a really good job of like the same thing with the Wavebird and the GameCube controller. They design their games like their controllers around their games. Like they go together hand in hand. So a lot of third-party ones sometimes don't feel right on those controllers, but the Nintendo stuff feels so good with them.
Yeah, and that's why I like the PlayStation controller, because I can play a variety of games on it, where the Nintendo...
When you upgrade to a new system too, when you've been playing PS2 for 5 years and PS3 comes out and you upgrade to that, you jump in right away and you don't have to relearn a new button. Same thing with PS4. So it's very comfortable bouncing around to those systems, whereas Nintendo, it's like complete redesign every single time.
And even the Xbox to the PlayStation is...
Yeah. Xbox has like a similar layout, but they evolve it a little more than the PlayStation
they smooth
does.
it out around it. But even like the controllers too are very similar.
Have you played with an Xbox One Elite controller?
No.
Are those the ones that have the triggers underneath?
If you want them to, they're all customizable, so you can add extra buttons to the back. Yeah, like if you flip them over, they've got little slots in the back where you can add extra rear triggers.
Underlay buttons.
Yeah, and you can remap them to wherever you want.
Weird.
You can some different.
I've seen a lot of like people who like love playing Call of Duty and stuff. They're like, I can't play without these buttons, and I look at them like, are you crazy? You just have the buttons right up there on the top. But I guess for them, it works easy for them to do quick shortcuts to stuff.
You can replace the D-pad on them. You can put new joysticks. You can like color match them. Like there's a lot of even these ones, the regular Xbox One controllers. If you go on the Xbox Design Lab website, you can custom order your own like color scheme to them, which is really cool. And you can even get little etched engravings on them.
Yeah, I think Microsoft just started doing that like a couple of years ago, didn't they?
Yeah, it's really really cool that you can customize them, which you don't see a lot. Like Nintendo will put out some pre-made customized stuff by your Luigi, your Peach, your Mario controllers.
Yeah, but you can never really go to a place and be like, hey, I want a custom.
Yeah, but you can't like
controller.
I love hot pink and brown, like make me a pink and brown controller. Like you can do that on the Xbox Design Lab, which is really neat.
I think actually it's funny because they say that, and the only time I see that now is with the Switch, but they're more third-party people who are redoing the joypads and stuff, making it look like a GameCube controller or an original Super Nintendo controller. Like there's a lot of cool ideas. It's just a shame that Nintendo didn't go with them.
I think N64 was the first to really kick it up with the color options, though.
For sure.
Ton of them.
Actually, that is true, because whenever it was like, I want you to press the red start button. Oh, red button. Blue button, green button. It's pretty easy instead of just being all black.
I don't mean just buttons. I mean like
the controller itself.
Yeah, you'd know like give Paul the green controller because that's got the bad stick.
Yeah,
I want the yellow one. That's my favorite.
There's a canary yellow. There was black. There was red. There was blue.
There was the atomic purple like see-through ones after a while.
Right, and then if you were like say playing with a family and stuff, like here's your controller. This is my controller.
Everyone would have their color that they go to. Like
we're still like that when we play Smash Brothers together.
Kelsey, number 3 pick.
My number 3, I'm going with the Super Nintendo controller. Wherever that ended up here. For every reason Paul said, like this, I don't feel needed to ever evolve. And if you look at the N64 controller, basically
that is
Super
true.
Nintendo, they took the good parts of the Super Nintendo, just added some stuff to it. But it's still got some of the best shoulders I've ever played with. Like you said, the D-pad is fantastic. Same thing with the start and select as the NES. I see those picked off once in a while, but if you're the only owner of the controller and you don't pick them, they last.
Well, like you said with Nintendo, like Nintendo did a lot of designing their games to fit the controller, because like I'm picturing playing Super Metroid on that.
Yeah, this one though I feel transcends that, like where they've got the Wavebird and the N64, where other companies had problems with it. When I think Nintendo, I can still think like Final Fantasy and Ninja Gaiden and Final Fight and Street Fighter and games that weren't made by Nintendo that this controller fits so well
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Like we weren't getting Street Fighter on the GameCube or the 64 because of the design of the controller.
Probably for other reasons too, but that'd be a big one. Yeah, it suits a whole bunch of genres, and I still feel it holds up. The durability is amazing. Like this controller I've had for like 15 years and it's still running strong. The one bad thing I'd probably say is some of them, if you get the ones with the terrible plastic, they'll turn yellow. For no fault of your own. But that seems to be about 50-50.
It's not made out of, but like the asbestos ones or what, the ones that obviously sat in the sun too long.
No, they just get oxidized by just the air. I've seen them pulled like straight out of sealed packages, like not from a smoked home, not that I've ever used, and they still have that yellow just because of the plastic they use. Yeah.
Okay.
But if you get one that's nice and gray, it'll last you a long time. And if you want to import a Famicom one, you get the colored buttons that look amazing too. I like those. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Paul, number 3.
I
guess
just want
for you, it's number 1.
number 1. This is a big reveal. But before, your honorable mention for the Wii U, is it honorable mention because of the like it was pretty revolutionary, just the things you can do on it. Because to me, it's like it's not a functional controller because it's so big and it's heavy and it's wireless. And
for me,
it doesn't look like it's durable.
For
'cause it's got a
me, it was an
screen.
honorable mention because Nintendo always looks to kind of revolutionize
Go
how we play
outside of
games,
the box.
going
Yeah,
outside of the box.
yeah.
And it's funny because you look at this and then put the Switch right beside it.
Yeah,
They are-
evolution. Yeah.
Just like stretched out.
Well, no, but they
With
are
the
the
Joy-Cons
yeah,
on it,
they
you
are
can
the
see it.
same thing now. And also I like the idea of having a second screen because who's to say that next cycle of games and stuff we're not going to have something that's like, here's your iPad with controllers.
yeah.
This is already what
They
that
do
is.
that already. Yeah.
They do that already. Yeah.
This is the exact same thing with the GameCube and the N64. Like Nintendo designed games to work with this controller.
Yeah.
Everyone else had so much trouble making this controller work for their games.
But Nintendo had a lot of games that were really fun.
Absolutely, yeah. Like you can't do Mario Maker on anything else that like you can on this.
Yeah, Nintendo gets an honorable mention just in their designs because they always had something new, something cutting edge where everybody else was giving you
Well, it's funny.
something that
Look-
was the
look at the
same old.
Wiimote.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I mean.
Like,
Totally. And then
I'm
you
not
had
gonna
the
say
Move controller.
I'm not gonna
come
say
out
they
right
were
after
the
that.
first to do motion gaming, but they were the ones to actually make it fun. And then after that, look at Sony and look at Xbox when they all of a sudden came out. Hey, we have
a
motion
Kinect.
stuff too.
Yeah.
Sony still uses the Move controllers with the PlayStation VR.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
That they copied off this. Yeah.
And it's awesome that they're pushing it, and the other companies, people go, well, it's just stale. They use the same thing, but that's what works.
Yeah.
And that's what people look forward to.
Yeah.
Some people get mad. It's like I have to do a new controller every time. But Nintendo definitely gets a nod for.
And they get
new...
a company having trouble with that because you got to invest
Yeah.
resources into new designs. You
Yeah.
can't just use what's always worked or what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, it's either a hit or a big, big miss.
Yeah.
Sorry. So what was your honorable mention? Just Nintendo in general.
Nintendo in general. I just wanted to touch on yours for why it was an honorable
Okay.
mention because it doesn't, for me,
It's
fit.
got a lot of
any of
tech
the
built into your
criteria.
controller. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it does. It's very
It's just,
I
cool.
agree.
it's
It's
just a
just
shame
genre.
that the console never implemented doing 2 of these.
And they said they would.
They were
did.
trying to, and they
Oh,
never
made me
did.
so
They did,
angry.
yeah.
But I think it was also because since the console didn't take off, they were like, okay, we can't actually.
They should have at least sold these separately because they did, like you said, they had battery issues. Sometimes they had connective issues. If your kid dropped it down the stairs or in the bathtub or whatever, because people would play these in the bathroom sometimes. You couldn't buy a replacement. Like you had to go through Nintendo. Like, It was a big pain to replace those.
Anyway, Paul, you're number 1.
Drum roll, please. Out of left field, the SNK Neo Geo arcade controller right here is my number 1. No, it's not. I just wanted to put it on camera.
I was getting really excited that this was happening.
I was gonna say because you're such a big fighting game fan, I can see why.
Just the fact, like, I love arcade gaming, and I still play a ton of arcades with like all the arcade ports, and I love going to the store and playing. We don't do it as much as we used to, but
Fighters
playing
and
King of
Windjammers,
Fighters, and this is probably actually my honorable mention. Controllers like this,
Yeah.
playing
So, and any arcade style.
arcade style, yeah. The buttons I think feel really good. I like how they're situated. I like.
Now, are you a ball top or bat top fan?
ball top?
I like the bat tops.
Do you like the bat tops? Yeah, I'm a ball top, even
Sorry.
for fighters.
Bat top?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
longer ones. Yeah.
Okay.
Ball top, bat
Usually
top.
the newer ones kind of look like a baseball bat where they get fatter on the outside.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you play like
I-
that? I can't remember.
Over
You're
top.
like that. Yeah,
I
I'm
would
an
kind of
over
be
top as
with
well.
more the ball because that looks arcadey to me.
Feels right. I know. I think I have one friend, even with his fight stick at home. He's an underplayer. He plays like that.
Weird.
Yeah, and he's really good. He's a really good.
Yeah.
Player.
Anyway, let's get to your number 1.
No big surprise here. My number 1 is the Super Nintendo controller. I just think it's the perfect controller. I spend on consoles probably the most amount of time on a Super Nintendo still at home. Kind of like your number 1 was the 64 for the games that you kind of put in line with the controller. I love the games on it. Street Fighter worked super good on this. All the side-scrolling games worked really well.
It's got just the right amount of complexity too.
Yeah.
Like some of the modern stuff, there's buttons you don't even use on it. There's too much on some of them, and like
PlayStation 4 touchpad and
Yeah, I'm
TV
playing something
screens in the middle of it.
like Batman Arkham Asylum, and I love that game. But if you put it down for a week and try and come back, you got to relearn the button.
Well, there's
now
also
it's
too.
again.
Sometimes, do you really need 2 triggers on the back, or are you easy to live just with one each? One left, one right.
Depends what you're playing.
Yeah,
if you're
typically
playing a shooter,
I'm typically happy with this,
Yeah.
but I don't play a lot of shooters.
yeah, if you're a shooter, like these style of controllers,
Yeah,
are the place
because there's your shoot, your grenade, or reload, whatever.
And like how we were talking about the controller that you can add the buttons down here.
Yeah.
That to me makes sense because now you can replace, because a lot of things are mapped to the D-pad in shooters, so you have to take your thing off of your movement button or your aim button
Right.
and press these. So if you can map them down here, so this is switch grenade,
cycling
this is
through
call your
options,
care
yeah.
package.
So you
this
can
is-
feel like you never let go of your
you're
movement for
constantly
1
looking
second.
and moving. Yeah, so that makes sense to me. But like it's simple, it's super durable. It works really well. The D-pad's nice and round. It doesn't eat your thumbs up really bad. Everything works all the time. Yeah, it's light. It's got a really good size cord on it. Yeah, it's to me the perfect controller. I don't like wireless stuff as much. All the stuff I buy for my PC is still wired in.
I actually have wireless Super Nintendo controllers, and the controller itself's really good, but they're infrared because they're so old. So
Yeah.
if you're more than 2 feet away or something walks in between the beam,
Cuts it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, the time before wireless got done
Yeah,
right.
like they had wireless back in the 2600 even.
Mhm.
They just weren't. Everything was infrared because that was the cheapest to do, and it's.
I
infrared's
do feel
terrible.
like I can recall seeing like so many people who had wireless controllers never worked properly until the Wavebird showed up.
Yeah, pretty much.
There were some PS2 ones that were okay, but the Wavebird really killed it.
Yeah.
So good.
And because I remember even like when the normal Xbox started, did they do wireless?
Not official ones
Not
at
at
first.
But I think it was
Maybe Mad Cats.
yeah,
those
third
guys.
party. And yeah, those guys.
Okay.
I feel that Dustin would probably be on board with us as well. Just that little bit of generation gap where his bread and butter was the 64.
I would be in agreement because I did say one of my top picks was a tie between N64 and that.
Yeah.
I lean towards this because this was like where I really started.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I would be happy to agree, and if all 3 of us would, that I would probably say the Super Nintendo controller probably
Yeah.
is one of, if not the best controller.
Yeah,
happy
like I
to
said,
put that up
it's
there,
my
yeah.
number one for all the reasons, all the love we've given it in this podcast. The 64, I like the 64, but that's for the library of 64 games, like how Dustin had a lot of fond memories of the games he would play with the 64 controller. That's my love on it, but to take it out of Mario, to take it out of the Ocarina of Time, to take it out of Star Fox and those games, it's not
And
most
the
functional for
joystick
me.
durability
And the durability,
loses some
yeah.
points for me too.
Definitely. And the gimmick of having to add, it was a cool idea to having to add stuff into the bottom of it, but not having it built in.
At the time, though, like I'm pretty sure that's the first controller that had Rumble in it ever.
Yep, it is.
And
It is.
Like you couldn't have had that on anything prior because they didn't have expansion ports on them. So
Yep.
that is a pretty big deal having the expansion port on.
But then to get controllers that had Rumble in it, and you can save on the console or with the memory stick that's always in it, so you don't have to switch your Rumble out to your save card.
Right.
So
Well, remember that was a change of technology. Though,
yeah,
too.
exactly. Yeah, it
Because think back to especially N64 era and stuff, like a lot of the games saved on the cartridge.
still.
The only things that really needed to save onto the memory card was
creations
like
and track editors
character
and stuff.
creations, ghosts for
Yeah.
racing and stuff,
Yeah.
because they just didn't have enough room for it.
Yeah. And it was just the 64, when I look at it, is a really good transitional controller and an important controller in the history of gaming.
Super important.
Because it was like the PlayStation was out with its normal.
That's
without
another one
the
where you see
analogs.
the PlayStation copy Nintendo again
Yeah.
and just do it a little better, I think.
Yeah. And it was like they had this really good idea, and then somebody else did it a little bit better, and they're like, well, let's just make a whole new controller and go in this direction.
Yeah,
And
I don't think you'd see the PS3 controller or the Switch controller or the Xbox One controller without the N64.
I agree.
That's a
Yeah.
huge evolutionary leap
Yeah.
there. But I think a lot of stuff's blown past it now.
Yeah, for sure.
And again, it's a change of technology too, because with the new PS4 controller, that touchpad thing, it's a not bad idea. I don't think it's being implemented the right way.
And the other thing too, it's
Even games that implement it, like I played Tearaway, which uses it quite a bit. It's not good.
well, it's a gimmick.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, a company throws a gimmick out there and sees if it sticks to the wall. I don't think that one's gonna stick.
It's weird that they built that into everything though. Like,
Yeah.
Like Microsoft tried it with the Kinect, with the
Yeah.
Xbox One. Like all of them originally came with an Xbox One. You couldn't buy it without or with a Kinect. And then they realized that was a bad idea.
This is
and
dumb.
They dropped it after a while.
Yeah. And it was like some gimmick stick, like the Rumble. Everybody's like, "That's such a good idea. Let's put it in."
Think
everything."
about
we have
now
HD
too, because
Rumble.
we didn't. I was gonna say we don't have them here with us, but the Joy-Cons have that built-in
Yeah.
HD Rumble. I still haven't played 1-2 Switch yet,
They
but it has that game where
the
it's
ice
like,
cubes.
well, yeah,
the
it's the
marbles,
ice
yeah.
cubes, the marbles in a box. Like apparently, I haven't gotten to play it, but the Joy-Con has a mini game, the 1-2 Switch, where you have to guess how many marbles are in this little wooden box. That you don't see it on. All you see on screen is just
the
holding
controller, and
this.
you can feel the marbles rolling in your controller. It's really, really neat. I don't know what game is going to make that functional and fun, but it's really cool tech.
That's
That you can actually feel marbles rolling in your controller, and you can be like, "There's 7 in here, or 4." Like
that
it's pretty
opens
crazy.
that opens the doors for some really strange games.
Yeah, which I hope
Here,
to see.
cough.
It's funny that you say that.
Colonoscopy sim.
Yeah.
2018.
It's funny that you say that because the
Cup the
creators
balls, cup the balls.
of Sengen Kagura,
Yeah.
the female ninja game,
Yeah.
has a Switch game coming out where it is essentially you are feeling up the teenage girls.
Whoa,
Because
whoa.
In their trailer videos, they show like a scientist guy doing research, and he's holding this squishy kind of water balloon thing, and he's holding the Wiimote, and he's like, So
some people may be
it's-
taking it. in the
might be
wrong
taking a little
direction.
too far, but
Just to think if it's implemented in a fighting game. The old nut twist for all
I
those.
thought you were stabbing somebody with a knife and twisting it.
shaking them.
But yeah, I don't know what the practical application of that
There's no.
technology is, but it is really neat.
But it exists.
It's a
Yeah.
cool idea. It's another.
Like you said,
another
it,
gimmick.
It might
it would
be a
not
touchpad,
exist
it's not
without the
matter.
rumble
Yeah.
of the N64.
Yeah.
So, but I think I'm in agreement that all three of us, I think we can all agree that the Super Nintendo controller is
I'm
the ultimate
quite
controller.
pleased to give that one the crown.
Let's hang it up. Since this is the first thing we've ever agreed on and given like a lifetime, the first Game Quest TV Lifetime Achievement Award goes to the Super Nintendo controller.
We gotta like spray paint one
Yeah.
gold now and
And we'll just
Hang
have,
it up behind
we'll have to
us.
have
just find one that's turned gold on its own. And
we'll just have to make that'll be our trophy is just a Super Nintendo controller.
That's in our Hall of Fame.
All right.
Well, every time this year we should put something in our Hall of Fame.
New Year, new Hall of Fame.
New
item.
Hall
The Game Quest TV Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that does it for this episode. So, on behalf of everybody here, thank Kelsey and Paul.
Always
For-
a pleasure.
For enjoying this, and I also want to thank everybody who.
Oh, we got
Left.
comments too.
Oh right, but I want to thank everybody who took part in the
The poll.
poll
Yeah.
and left us some comments as to why they
Yeah.
liked the controllers. They're all very good, legit reasons, and
You even had another N64 defender in there.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
for sure.
So it all depends on what kind of era of gaming you're looking at.
The list was important too because it shows that because there's people of all ages on that list, and I like that they're
Super Nintendo was like 4th on there,
Yeah.
and then they had very modern and retro both showing up.
so it's cool that game companies are doing a good job of making controllers still viable and people still want to use them.
Right. It was on our last
of them.
podcast that we had comments from?
We have
Just want to see if I can pull them up here quickly here because
Messages
we
on
should
both of
acknowledge them. So
which one are you looking at? 8, and we do have some on 9 as well that I'll bring up.
just trying to see if I can pull it
Or
up here.
Luigi.
Okay, right. Right, yeah, we did have comments on our last episode, the video game commercials podcast that we did last week. We had a comment that somebody said it's great to see some X-Wing in there, guys. They love, apparently they like the idea of
shout
having the
out.
X-Wing stuff. And Nostalgia Goggles left us another awesome comment, and I'll read it out here. Let's make sure I hit the read more thing. That was great. I forgot about like half of these commercials, even though I've never really seen them, a lot of the older ones on TV. I do remember them from the best of videos on YouTube For me, some of the commercials that stand out there are the Ratchet and Clank ones. I forgot about those ones.
Yeah, I haven't seen
The
those.
ones
in
where it
years.
was, I think it was like the guy's like, hey, we're testing out this awesome weapon we just found, and they end up blowing up a building
'cause
or
the whole
something.
thing was about the goofy weaponry in that game. Yeah.
I never owned a PS2, but I really wanted just to play one of those games. The other ones were World of Warcraft ones featuring celebrities. Who did not want to be a night elf mohawk after watching Mr. T?
Yeah, that was a pretty good commercial.
I missed those when they were new, and I think the only one I've seen is like the Aubrey Plaza one. Not the biggest endorsement of World
not
of Warcraft.
The biggest, yeah,
but,
not the
there
best.
was
The
a-
Mr.
there was-
T one.
Rob
there-
Williams
there's
one
Shat-
too, wasn't there?
No, there was Shatner. Shatner did one.
Mr.
Because
T
Shatner
did
was a
some-
wizard.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
dislike Warcraft so much, or World of Warcraft.
World of Warcraft
specifically.
Yeah, specifically.
That I don't know. I might have an unfair look at those
Biased.
commercials. Yeah.
Nostalgic Goggles also said, the thing about Mad Catz when they went bankrupt, everybody was so quick to put the blame on Harmonix and Rock Band 4. What people neglect to mention is the fact that on-couch co-op has been dead or dying for the last 10 years. With the push of online gaming and the exclusions of split screen in many games, most gamers have no need for a second controller, but Harmonix and Rock Band are still pretty strong right now with consistent updates and DLC. Sorry, I'm a huge Rock Band fan and I'm a little bit defensive when people get really negative towards them.
Oh, I wasn't trying to be negative towards Rock Band specifically. Harmonix is a fantastic company that puts a lot of quality into their
A lot of
releases.
TLC.
Yeah, I was more trying to rag on
Is
Mad
Harmonix
Catz.
also behind Rocksmith too?
I don't believe so. No, I think that's another company. Ignition or something.
But the couch co-op thing.
Yeah, like
I feel like people like Nintendo and stuff are trying to bring couch co-op back. Because I do agree that I have seen a decrease in couch co-op stuff because everybody is all, I have my
huge
Xbox,
decrease.
I have my TV, I play with my friends
it's
online.
really frustrating sometimes when people come to the store and they're like, "My buddy's coming up just for this weekend. We want to play something together. I have a PS4. What can we do?"
and you
it's
just look at
like,
them and go,
You can play Little Big Planet. Like
Yeah.
the end, like they really, it's hard. Like he's like, we love racing games. It's like you both need a console, you both need a profile.
Yeah.
We love shooters. You both
Buy
need
a
a console,
Nintendo
you both need a
64?
profile. Yeah,
My Gundam Versus game for PS4
yeah.
is not split screen.
Ooh.
Weird.
It's single player only on one console. So if you wanted to play with a friend, they would have to play on their own PS4.
Right.
I was
Yeah.
not happy about that when I found out.
It's very frustrating.
But
It makes sense, but at the same time,
would be
it's sad.
It'd be nice to see the return of split screen stuff. Again, I think Nintendo's kind of pushing that route to bring back some
Also-
form of couch co-op stuff. And there are other people who are also trying to do that too.
Poke nostalgia goggles a little bit. Rock Band sucks compared to Guitar Hero. Guitar Hero is so much better. We'll see if he responds to that.
Shots fired.
Shots fired.
Shots fired.
Circles
I'm just gonna
greater than
I'm
rectangles.
gonna just stand over here and wait for the
wait for the fall.
catapult to come over.
Harmonix has done both, so no harm to Harmonix.
So you feel that Guitar Hero is better than
circles
Rock
are so much better than rectangles.
Okay.
Band. Paul and I aren't gonna touch that one.
Nostalgia Goggles also had one from 2 episodes ago that we didn't touch on. He got his comment in late, just to show all the fans how we scour for comments. We scour for comments.
Scrape the bottom of the barrel.
And he says, "Hey guys, I hope to get this comment before you record the next show, but I have a question for you three. It's very clear that both Kelsy and Dustin have a good-sized game collection, and I was curious, what are your most prized pieces in your collections?"
Right, I forgot about that question because I did respond to him below that one. What are our most prized possessions?
Yeah, prized pieces in your collection.
For me, I had left a comment below, said that for me right now, my prized stuff was my signed N64 Super Mario 64 by Charles Martinet. Actually, even Kelsey's got one right here.
one as well.
Signed
in the
on the box. So
No, it's in a just case, protective case.
for me, he signed on the box and the cartridge as like, Super Dustin, thanks for being a #1 fan, whatnot. And then for me, I'm not probably as big a collector as Kelsey. Like I like collecting the games
Kelsey's
that
got a huge collection.
I like collecting the games that I played or really enjoyed, but I do think I am kind of proud that I have Mega Man Legends 1, 2, and Misadventures of Tron Bonne. So, and those are really hard games to find.
They are, yeah.
And
It's
especially,
cool. It's cool when those line up because there's always when people ask you that question, there's like the value thing or the nostalgia thing, and it's nice when they're the same. Yeah.
And considering Misadventures of Tron Bonne is like $200 for a
most
complete
expensive
version.
PlayStation 1 game right now.
Yeah,
like for as
so
far as official releases.
I'm
go.
quite happy I have it.
Yeah.
So
Like I said, there's the nostalgia thing, and then there's the like collectability and rarity thing. For me, I've still got some original games. Unfortunately, I sold most of my NES, Super NES, and had to recollect them over the years. But I still have my original Lunar 2 Eternal Blue, the big re-release that they put out for PlayStation. I have the one that I bought when I was a kid. Played, like, the soundtrack is Thrash because I used to put it in my car when I first started driving and stuff. So I've still got all of that, and I kept the Omaki box sealed. So I've still got the like medallion, the map, and all the characters and stuff. So that one's really important to me, even though it's not the most valuable game I own. And then I've got some crazy stuff, like stadium events and Magical Chase and things like that are just hard to find and valuable, but they don't have much sentimental attachment. But when I was finishing collecting every licensed Nintendo game, I was one short, and I was pretty content to wait until I could find one in person on that. And a forum that I belong to called RF Generation. There's a lot of friends I've made over there that I've traveled across countries to meet and spend time with. They all pooled their money to get me the last game I needed. They knew that was on my list and I was going to wait for it. So at the time, I hadn't met these people yet. We were just friends for, like, some of them, like, 10 years online. They asked a whole bunch of people behind my back, like, hey, throw $10 at me. We want to get them this last game. And, like, it was about $200, I think, they pulled together to get the game and ship.
What was the game?
It's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Oh, cool.
There's 2 versions of it on the NES, and the Ubisoft version is particularly hard to find. So they all pooled their money, found one locally, grabbed it, shipped it to me with a really awesome card that everybody signed.
Wow.
They like
That's
shipped it
awesome.
around. Yeah, it was really impressive. And a local member of the website lives in town here, so they shipped it to him. He gift wrapped it and like brought it into the store one day shortly after we'd opened, and it was really, really cool. And that's one of my favorite items that I've got.
That's a cool memory that goes along with it. Like, it's
Yeah.
stuff like that means.
Well, considering also
Yeah,
like that
most.
was like that's the last one you needed for your collection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that these group of people went and got it for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool, and I've met a lot of them since then, and they're just a bunch of really cool guys. But just to give RF Generation a little plug as well, besides having an awesome forum community, that's where I track my collection. They've got really awesome collection tools in there. So if you have a big collection, like anything over 20 games, like it's worth going on there and keeping everything you've got listed. And there's a lot of people always doing like trades and sales and stuff, and just awesome retro dudes that love to talk about games.
I would actually love to do that. I'd love to be able to track my collection
Yeah,
because
they've
I
got
have too many things now.
They've got a phone app that I use that's free. I don't think it's on iOS though, just Android.
The one that looks like a bookshelf.
No, it's like old gray and red kind of format. I don't know if we can show that to the camera at all. But I've got like my 3DO wish list up right now, which I use to track a lot of my wants as well as what I have. It's really awesome.
Paul, do you have anything that's either nostalgic or valuable in your collection of stuff? If you have a collection?
I do have a collection. I downgraded through the years because I used to move a lot for work and for school and stuff like that. So I always kept like hung on to like some classic Super Nintendo stuff, Chrono Trigger, Mario RPG, Final Fantasy 3.
These are the copies you had when you were young? That's awesome.
Not in boxes though, unfortunately. The only game I still have in a box, and it's probably my prized video game, is Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
Nice.
Still in a
Oh,
box.
Mike Tyson's
Get the
Punch-Out.
letter too?
With the letter.
Oh, sweet. That's lost a lot of times.
And then I have like another Mike Tyson's that I play. It's got a little bit of like a when you shake it, it's got a little bit of a rattle to it, and I love it. I use that one. So the games I have in my collection are Nintendo and Super Nintendo for the most part. I've got some 64 stuff like Mario and Zelda. Alundra for the PlayStation is something that I covet
Cool one.
pretty highly.
Working designs stuff is just so collectible, so awesome. It just feels good. They put so much effort into their packaging.
So I don't necessarily have a large collection like these guys. I have the games that...
Sounds like pretty much all quality, though.
Yeah, the stuff that means the most to me and is of high quality that I go back to and play a lot, like Street Fighter games, Alpha 3, Street Fighter 2, Mario games, things like that where I can pop them in. But I did downsize, like I said, and I have a Raspberry Pi with the Retro Pi on it. So I have...
You have access to everything.
Every
basically.
single game, all the arcade games, Nintendo 64, PlayStation. So I have that, and I use that a lot. Like that, instead of downgrading the quality of my cartridges even more, like I only pop out my cartridges for certain friends that come over, and we'll sit in my office and play them. Otherwise, we're in the living room
You
playing
know,
on
if
the
you
Raspberry.
make the cut, if you're playing on an official cartridge.
Yeah, exactly. Other than that, I have a PC.
If you get to walk in and witness the Mike Tyson's Punch Out.
Yeah, I don't.
I know that one's like in like the top 10 like
Then you're
hardest
bestie.
Nintendo things to find.
Yeah, and I really like that
Oh
one.
no, there's lots harder to find than that.
Well, as far as I know, like
With
one
the
of,
with the letter.
Nah, like there's
Oh.
this doesn't even.
Well, I'm throwing it in the
Classified.
garbage when I get home.
Yeah, you basically should.
Throw it in my garbage. Other than that, like a PC, I collect other things. I collect comic books and different things like that.
Yeah,
So
we can do that another day. I
Yeah.
same way.
yeah, I've got like a huge bookshelf full of action
I'm
figures
sure,
and
I'm
stuff.
sure we all have other
Yeah.
collectibles that
Yeah.
we haven't mentioned here.
Yeah.
Yet, so.
So that was kind of the last part of Kenny or Nostalgia Goggles question. He says, "I'm sure Paul has a decent collection as well, but come on, who doesn't like special editions of games? You're missing out on so many great figurines, art books, and other little knickknacks, but not getting special editions." I still stand pretty strong by that. The only art book I've ever bought was a Street Fighter art book that covered.
We got one of those.
Yeah, it was really awesome and had like a write up on every game and what the changes were and stuff like that. Didn't come out with a game. Figurines, the figurines that come with games aren't something that I'm really after. Like if somebody makes a figurine and it's a really good quality and it's really awesome, I'll go out and I'll buy that on its own.
Like going out and buying like a Figma
Yeah.
figure and stuff. Like I love those Figma ones. They're really good quality, but they're sometimes hard to find.
Yeah, like I can't remember what Udon was. It Udon? No, that was a comic company. Can't remember the name, but there was a name that made a company that made Street Fighter.
The
Figures,
They're
and
really
they
cool.
were
Yeah, they're
like-
tall too. I like those.
And they move. They're like
very articulated.
yeah, and they had different hands and heads, and
Yeah.
they were really awesome. I have a whole bunch of those. There's more I'd like to get. I just haven't really looked into it. So
Awesome.
yeah, I do collect things, just not game special
Special
editions.
editions.
Well, I think we'll open that for another discussion
Yeah.
later on. Well, I guess the only thing to wrap up this episode then is if you feel like you agree with us on our controller
Super
stuff.
Nintendo, yeah, right or wrong.
Are we right or wrong? What is your favorite controller? And maybe give us some reasons why it's your favorite one. It can be a retro one. It can be a modern one. It can be whatever you want.
What's your least favorite as well?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be a good one. What is your least favorite controller?
If it's not the Jaguar, you're wrong.
And if you want to leave suggestions for what may be one of our next upcoming podcast episodes, feel free to leave us some ideas as to what you'd like us to cover. But otherwise, I think that is a day for us.
Should do it.
That wraps her up, boys.
All right. Awesome.
Adios. See you in the comments.